All right, welcome back to Bayou Time. And if you haven't heard, if you live in Lafourche, there's a tax proposition coming up. So we thought we'd explain it to you. And who better to have on here than the superintendent and the parish president of Lafourche Parish. Our guest, there you see it, far away from you, way down the line, Jarod Martin. Good to see you, Mr. Superintendent. How are you?
Absolutely, thank you. Very good.
All right, and of course, Archie Chaisson, been on the show many times, and of course, I haven't seen him in a while, but you doing okay?
Yeah, Martin, thanks for having us.
Good. All right, so let's, whenever we talk about taxes, it can become complicated. So I always try to tell the guest, talking to the public, simplify this for me, and for me too. So who wants to take the floor first?
Yeah, Martin, so I will say that this is something that's been about 3 years in the making, right? The superintendent and I got together. When I first took office, he was fresh in the superintendent spot. We knew we had a toxic tax structure in Lafourche, right? Our assessor has talked about it. We've had 2 different blue ribbon committees in Lafourche over the last 30 years who have talked about it. And it was something that we talked about during the campaign and something we wanted to tackle. So we brought in Dr. Jim Richardson from LSU, who's a state economist, has worked with the legislature for probably 40 years on the state's revenue estimating conference. Create a steering committee with the superintendent, the sheriff, the assessor, some small business owners, some council members, the mayors. And so let's see if we can take a crack at this. So over the course of the last 3 years, working with Dr. Richardson through COVID and the hurricanes and everything else that's been thrown at us, we kind of came up with the options of, let's take a very small bite at the apple. We have 64 boards and commissions in Lafourche, half of which have some sort of taxing authority. So let's look at what's easily grabbable, right? Which for us is really roads and bridges and garbage collection, for the lack of a better term. And then about part of the way through this, the superintendent came in and said, well, if we're rolling back some taxes, if we're going to streamline some stuff, is there an opportunity for the school board to pick up what you guys are letting off, and let's do some meaningful pay raises for our teachers and really invest in our public education system? So we should, sure, let's figure out how to rope that in. The key goal in all of this is to reduce your property taxes, to reduce your sales taxes, while simultaneously being able to give teachers those pay raises. And I think this plan accomplishes that.
Yeah, it's sort of unusual when you think about it. As I was looking through it, I said, well, I think Mr. Martin's trying to get, what, 4,000 a teacher?
That is correct. So we're trying to give our teachers a $4,000 a year annual increase in their salary.
So y'all were looking at all this, and of course, when the public hears tax increase for teachers, a tax increase for anything, they go, but y'all have structured this where you're letting things dissolve and you're restructuring, for lack of a better word. Is that a good word?
That's right, Martin. Mm-hmm. And I had a discussion with a small business owner in Thibodaux today on the drive over here, and you've seen signs pop up and down Lafourche Parish that say, no new taxes, right? None of this stuff is new, right? All we're doing is reallocating and rededicating some stuff. And in a lot of cases, when you look at roads, bridges, and drainage, for example, right? How we pay the salaries of the men and women who cut your grass and fix your pothole and dig your ditches. We collect 5 different millages depending on where you live in Lafourche Parish. So what we're trying to do is streamline those 5 millages into one new proposition that will, in some cases, take people's property taxes for roads and bridges and drainage and cut it in half. Mm-hmm. So depending on where you live in Lafourche, you're paying anywhere between 14 mills of property tax down to a little over 9. We're going to streamline and structure it down to where it's 8 mills. So the average person off the gate saves between about $50 to $150 a year in property taxes. And then when you look at the sales tax side of the house for us, how we actually do capital construction, right? Those 2 road sales tax districts we have in Lafourche, consolidating those 2 and running a half a penny sales tax across the parish. Depending on where you shop, what your monthly income is, we'll take your sales tax and we'll save you between $25 and $400 a month, depending on where you shop and what your
to offset the $16
to offset the $16.
Because people are seeing the $16, but you're going to offset that by $25 to $40. I say so.
The $192 a year you're going to pay for garbage service is going to be completely offset. Now, look, there is a very small portion of the population that is going to be homestead exempt, right? They're going to have a low monthly disposable income, so it may cost them a couple dollars, right? But that's a very small portion of the population. But we did a town hall last week down in Cutoff and had a local business owner stand up and say, and something we never thought about through this whole process was that, a lot of businesses factor in their property taxes as a cost of doing business, right? So that lawnmower at Mr. Neal's Small Engines place may have just become $50 cheaper because now we've saved him $5,000 a year on his property tax between his businesses. So even though you might not see it year to year on your property tax bill, you're paying for it across the scope of your businesses when you get your lawnmower worked on, or you buy a refrigerator, or you buy a truck, or you pay that car note every month, something like that. So it's going to be a very streamlined and efficient process where we can not double tax people in a lot of cases, or in the case of solid waste, when you're talking about that sales tax that we pay right now for solid waste, unlike Terrebonne, which is a user fee, right? We're either overtaxing you, like we have the last couple of years because of the hurricane, and we end up with a $10 million fund balance in that solid waste fund. And in some cases, if you remember back to 2018, when the parish actually tried to raise sales taxes to cover the garbage because the economy was a little sluggish, we're never going to have to worry about that anymore. We're going to break even every year at a much lower cost to the consumer.
So I think the confusing part for me when I first saw it, I've read up on it, so I'm a little better, but just for the average person that's looking at it, they got to vote on 6 different propositions.
So the only 2 that are connected are what we call Propositions 4 and 5, right?
Okay.
Which is the reduction of the solid waste sales tax on the parish side,
Okay.
and the on-ramping, as Mr. Martin calls it, of the solid waste tax on the school board side. So we're rolling back 4/10 of a penny. The school board is going to pick up 4/10 of a penny. Those are the only 2 that are connected. The rest of them can pass or fail as they want, and it'll play out the way it will.
I'm glad you said it, because the rumors
Yeah.
out there is that if they all fail, I mean, if one of them fails, they all fail. That's not correct.
No. And,
Okay.
and look, at the end of the day, Martin, the easiest way to explain this is that all 6 of these are going to pass. You're going to see lower property taxes on your bill every December when you get that nice Christmas present in from the sheriff's office. You're going to see lower sales taxes every time you go to the grocery store or Rouse's or whatever you go to. And then you're going to see teacher pay raises, which is a meaningful investment. Mr. Martin does a really better job than I do talking about that. But we're going to see meaningful investments in our public education system to keep our teachers here, to be able to recruit and retain them.
Yeah, and let's switch to Mr. Martin, because obviously y'all got some pretty good competition not far away, because all the plants out
That's
there,
right.
they get a lot of tax income, which goes to pretty good pay, starter pay for teachers. So if you don't compete, you don't get the creme de la creme, do you?
And not only the creme de la creme, you don't get anything. And that's what we're getting right now. So there's a nationwide teacher shortage. The way that's impacting us is that these river parishes that we happen to border are seeing that shortage as well. So what do? They increase teacher pay. St. Charles Parish increased teacher salaries by 10% in this most recent fiscal year, and they have the capital to do that because of what you said. There's a Mississippi River that runs through their parish. They've got tremendous tax base because of these industries, and they are levying larger taxes in those parishes that have this large tax base. So understand that 3% of sales taxes are dedicated to public education in St. Charles Parish, and 55 mills, both of which represent about a 30% increase in the tax base, not because of the value of the parish, but because that community has invested in its public education system at a greater rate than we are in Lafourche. This initiative would bring our rate to 2.4 to their 3%, but it would allow us to generate revenue desperately needed for teacher pay increases, because as the national teacher shortage strikes all of these areas, they're going to keep recruiting, and instead of going to the universities, unfortunately, they're taking veteran teachers from the classrooms in Lafourche Parish, and we cannot afford to lose them.
And I know some of the critics are saying, well, Archie, you're trying to play the superintendent, or Mr. Martin, you're trying to get involved with the parish president. But I see the marriage. I mean, it's obvious to me, but instead of levying or going to them twice, you get together and go to them once. There's a lot at stake in there.
No doubt, and I'm the first to admit, and I say this a lot, and when we do these presentations out in the public, that this is a very weird relationship, right? Typically, and you've been covering Lafourche politics for a very long time,
I don't know
right?
if I've ever seen this.
Typically, we're not used to this in Lafourche Parish. We're not used to government
used to
entities
get
working
along.
together, right? And Jarod is not only a friend, but he's a colleague. And you finally have a group of officials in Lafourche that are willing to tackle stuff like this. And one of the rumor slides we do in our presentation talks about a councilman saying in a public meeting that the school board doesn't dig ditches for Lafourche Parish, let them worry about their own budgets. And in that slide, we have a picture of several of our employees, because when you come to work for Lafourche Parish, what do you need? You need a high school diploma. So Mr. Martin and the teachers in the school system and all of the staff there are educating the people who are actually taking care of us day to day, whether it's the guys in Public Works or the people in OEP who take care of us during storms, the people who give you your permit to build your new house. And not only that, if we're going to do our best to be able to grow our businesses here in Lafourche, right, this is a huge step towards streamlining our tax structure. So if we're going to recruit and retain businesses, we have to be able to produce quality students. And if I don't work together with him on this, then we all lose.
Yeah. Can you all explain the propositions? Maybe we could sort of break them down and have a little cheat. Can we talk about all six?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's start with Proposition 1.
Yeah. So there's 6 propositions. 4 of those are the parishes. 2 of them are the school boards. And proposition number 1 is just a straight up reduction. We collect a consolidated millage that has to do with drainage, public health, and libraries. Because we are keeping the libraries and the public health units funding the same, that proposition has to be voted on separately. But that one is just an overall reduction from 5 mills down to 3, because we're removing the drainage component. And that'll be in proposition number 2. That's taking that consolidated millage for drainage along with 4 other drainage millages and road millages and combining them into one brand new
Let me ask
tax.
you before we get to 2, why do you have to do it? Because they were voted on
Yeah.
individually, you have to vote them out individually?
That's right. So in 2004, Ms. Randolph did some rededications because she came into an overwhelming surplus because of the Council 5-4 days where we didn't have a budget for several years.
Yeah.
So because of that, drainage, public health, and libraries were all lumped in for whatever reason, I think to save space on the ballot. So we have to remove drainage alone by itself from that first proposition.
Y'all had 5-4 days?
We did.
I tend to remember it a little
do
bit.
too.
Proposition 2.
So Proposition 2 takes the 2 independent drainage districts we have left in Lafourche, Drainage District number 1, Drainage District number 5, as well as 3 other parish-wide millages for roads and drainage, and combines them into one 8-mill pocket. So we're taking you from, again, anywhere from 14 mills of property tax, or the low point down to 10.8, or 9.8, excuse me, depending on where you live in Lafourche Parish, and we're reducing that overall property tax down to 8 mills. A majority of the savings comes from the streamlining of those 2 drainage districts, which are really good people. They have great boards that have operated them for years, but they were created for political reasons back in the day. In a lot of cases, we're double taxing people because we're doing some of the same work they're doing. So we can efficiently take that in and lower people's property tax and still provide the same level, if not better, service.
Are you getting a lot of interference from, a lot of times, in my coverage over the years, when somebody's used to getting that millage and that money, they don't ever want to let it go.
Yeah, so we've met with both of the drainage districts. Mr. Martin and I sat with Drainage District number 5 a couple of weeks ago, and they're worried about some local control issues and not having the ability to have a constant focus on that. And I'm going out on a limb, right? I'm asking them to trust me as the government that we're going to continue to take care of them. And at the end of the day, we have to, right? Because I wouldn't be a very good politician if I didn't, and needed those votes at the end of the day. But just overall, we're doing this to better Lafourche, and I'm not going to end up with egg on our face as the administration or the council for going forward with this and not taking care of people.
So to make a long story short, where they were administrating some of their needs, you'll administrate.
Absolutely.
Okay, right. Proposition 3.
So Proposition 3 is the consolidation of the 2 road sales tax districts. So we have a road sales tax district that runs from Valentine North, and then one that runs from Valentine South. You collect a full penny in Upper Lafourche, a half a penny in South Lafourche. This consolidates both of those, so we have one complete road district now, and then creates a half a penny sales tax across the parish.
Okay. So one of them gets a half cent drop.
That's right.
And the other one stays the same.
We'll be saving money up the bayou.
All right. Proposition number 4.
So that's the one where the school board begins to fit into the puzzle. That's creating or taking our solid waste district, which is garbage collection and our nuisance cases, the derelict houses, the tall grass. Anytime you buy anything in the parish, you pay 7/10 of a penny for that garbage collection. We're going to roll that back to 3/10 of a penny. That'll still give us enough money to handle the nuisance problems that we see across the parish. We'll move the $16 a month garbage collection fee to a user fee on your water bill or some other billing structure. And then the 5th proposition, which begins the school board's input in this, is the on-ramping of that 0.4 sales tax. And like I mentioned earlier, those are the only 2 that are connected. And look, Martin, we've heard some concerns about the $16 a month water bill. And when you look at Terrebonne, when you look at just about any other parish in Lafourche or in Louisiana, you collect it on a user fee, right? Because again, you don't have to worry about fluctuations in sales tax and overpaying or underpaying anything. And as well, you know, businesses factor that in. So your truck driver coming from Lafayette to Fourchon with a load of pipe is going to inherently stop at a truck stop in Lafourche and buy a snack or something to eat. And he's paying a solid waste sales tax that he never gets to use because he's going to throw that garbage away at that business. And guess what? They have a dumpster because we don't pick up their garbage for them. So not only are we streamlining government and passing some money on to the school board, but we're lowering the cost of businesses for a lot of people because they're not having to charge that sales tax.
From the southern part of Lafourche to Thibodeau and other parts where they look at it differently.
That's right. You know, and it's a little weird, right? And again, this is people are so used to seeing, you know, not seeing a garbage fee, right? Because you don't notice that 0.7 of a penny every time you go to the grocery store, right? But as the cost of commodities go up, right? Eggs cost more now, bread costs more now, milk costs more now. So guess what? You're actually paying more in sales tax every time you go to the store than if you just paid the $16 a month on your water bill, right? So we're actually going to save you money on that aspect as well.
You're right. It is different when you see two heads of big departments getting together to make it work. But, you know, I sort of want to let the audience know that what he said earlier is sort of grave to me when you think about if you don't do something, and I hate to be the naysayer here, but if you don't do something, what is the school system going to look like?
Well, you know, I think it's going to look a lot like the way we look now and potentially worse. And the way we look now is not good. I've got 14 teacher vacancies that I cannot fill across the district. We've got students in high schools today that are having to take their classes through a computer and a software program because the teachers don't exist. We have hired over 100 folks with college degrees, and we need them desperately because they have a passion for education and they want to become certified teachers. But in that period between being hired because you have a college degree and becoming a full certified, well-developed teacher that understands how to develop lesson plans, assessments, classroom management plans, you're not as effective as the effective certified teachers that have been doing this 5 or 6 years, because the folks that are leaving Lafourche Parish to go and teach in other parishes, oftentimes they are not our struggling teachers. They are our senior, veteran, phenomenal teachers. And so the expense to the community is huge. The expense to our children is huge, and this much needed increase in revenue would go a long way to shoring that up. So while we're not faced with dire consequences in terms of cuts and rifts and other nightmares if this doesn't pass, without investing heavily in public education, I fear that we are going to continue to stagnate and fall behind, and that's just not a reality that I'm willing to face, and I don't think the people of Lafourche Parish want to face it either.
The next question, I guess, would be, is the 4,000 sufficient enough to steady the ship, so to speak?
We believe it is. Okay. It makes us competitive, absolutely. It doesn't put us above the starting pay or even average pay of St. Charles or St. James Parish.
50-something, 53, 54?
So St. Charles is the highest paying district in the state. Their first year teachers are starting at 54. My 20-year veterans are at 49, right? So they go from 54 on up to 68, 69,000 a year. We're not going to surpass that in 1 or 2 years, but if we can make it where it's competitive, where it's not life-altering salary differences simply by driving 20 minutes to the east, we believe that it's going to go a long way. Lafourche Parish teachers are frankly used to paying or getting paid less than St. Charles Parish. This is not new that these river parishes are able to do this. It's being exacerbated by the national and statewide teacher shortage, and the gap has just gotten larger. It used to be a $4,000 or $5,000 a year gap. Now it's grown to a $14,000, $15,000, sometimes $18,000.
I guess the bottom line is they don't want to leave. They're dedicated, but they just want to be appreciated a little bit.
That's right. Well, and not only the appreciation, like all of us, that there are eggs to buy.
Right.
Right. There are mouths to feed, and there are cars to buy. And so when they're trying to navigate life, if they can continue to do the thing that they want to do and love to do and have a calling to do, which is teach, whether it's third grade or high school American history, and they can do that thing in a neighboring parish and get paid $18,000 more a year. Balancing the checkbook will cause one to really strongly consider where they're going to do that.
Are we at Proposition 5 now?
We are, and that's where the Lafourche schools pick up, right? So that is the Lafourche Parish School District proposition. It is the singular proposition that is tied to another. Proposition number 5 is tied to proposition number 4 because we cannot stand up the 0.4 cent sales tax increase, which is what we're asking for, unless the parish removes that 0.4 cent sales tax from its collections. And right now that money is of course going for solid waste. And then proposition number 6 is also the school districts. It is probably the easiest because it is a simple rededication and some repurposing. So some years ago, the people of Lafourche Parish supported a school initiative, which was some safe schools projects. What we have done with the 4 mills that's levied with the safe schools is we have hardened our facilities. We've added fencing, we've added single point of entry, we've added ballistic rated doors where you've got to be checked into the school to make sure that our buildings are, frankly, fortresses. That was a multi-million-dollar, multi-year investment to make sure that our schools are safe. We also use this money for school resource officers, the police officers that are on our campuses, cameras, and all things to keep our schools safe. We want to continue all of those endeavors with this money. However, the major construction projects associated with our safety initiative are complete. So rather than continue to spend millions of dollars to continue to upgrade these facilities, we've run out of facilities to upgrade. They are upgraded. And so in years that we have a surplus, the rededication on Proposition 6 would allow us to use any additional funds also for salaries and benefits. And I'd like to add that in the call, in the language of both propositions, the changes do specify that the money must be used for salaries and benefits of employees of the Lafourche Parish School District. And as the superintendent, I do not qualify as an employee. I'm a contracted superintendent. The superintendent's office will not be impacted by proposition number 5 at all, and the money generated by both of these propositions is dedicated to the employees. Who are the employees? The cafeteria workers, the custodians, the teachers, the principals, the bus drivers, the rank and file school employees. That's who the money has to go to.
Because you'll still go, the board will decide.
The board determines my fate contractually, as you've covered, for many, many years.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Archie, obviously when you do these things, there's always one or two that are, and look, we'll bring you on if you got a good argument. We'll bring you on, but have y'all met with the people that move and shake in the community, and just what's their overall sense at this point?
Yeah, so Martin, when we went into this, Mr. Martin and I realized that, when the school board tried a tax election a few years ago, it didn't go very well, right? Lost by some 19 votes. The parish tried some tax reform years ago when we tried to build a new jail back in 2013, 2014, and everybody remembers the books, not crook signs everywhere as we tried to take library money and build a new jail. So we didn't want to do that again, which is why we created the steering committee, why we created, why we brought Dr. Richardson in, because I didn't want to just be the politician up here saying, hey, I'm going to do what's right with your money, and we end up with the lottery scheme where none of that money went to education, right? And then we hit the road. Mr. Martin and I have visited every school and talked to the faculty members. We've done the chambers, the Rotaries, the Kiwanis. We joke that if you make a pot of coffee on a Sunday afternoon, we're coming to your house because we're going to explain this to you. And I'm very proud to say that both chambers, both Lafourche and the Lafourche Chamber and the City of Thibodeau Chamber have endorsed the plan. The Bayou Industrial Group, which is a huge business group for us in Lafourche Parish, has endorsed the plan. We have mom and pop businesses up and down the Bayou that, and as well as big businesses, including some of the major shipbuilders and vessel owners in Lafourche that have backed this plan. Because they see a tax break too. In Lafourche, we tax vessels just like we tax your house. So we save vessel owners some $54 million over the next 5 years with this plan. So they've been very receptive to it, been very open to it. Of course, the teachers are on board because there's a little piece of the carrot in there for them as well, and they work hard and they deserve that, which is why we included them in this plan. So it's been very well. It's been very receptive. We have seen the naysayers, right? We've had a councilman who's been very vocal, and again, because in 1986 and 1996, when a lot of these taxes were created, he was on the council and he created them. So we're kind of digging in his sandbox a little bit, and he doesn't like it. But again, I'm asking the public to trust not only me, but Mr. Martin and the school board and our council who voted to put this on the ballot, that we're going to put us on the right direction and that this is going to lead to a brighter day in Lafourche.
Well, I think Mr. Martin just answered it. A lot of people, when a tax comes up, they want to say, well, y'all didn't quite word this. It's a little vague. Where's the money going? But I think he just answered. He doesn't get a raise.
Yeah, neither do I. So,
Okay.
you know, and that's the thing, Martin, and we've joked about this. You know, we sat in the room with probably 4 different tax attorneys over the course of a day, working them through the process, everything the steering committee had done, where we wanted to reallocate the money, what we wanted to consolidate, what we wanted to leave alone. And about a week later, they sent us the actual ballot language, which you're going to see when you go in the voting booth. And we were confused. So for the average person out there, which is why, and you're seeing it, you're holding it now, is the simplified version of those propositions.
Right.
We've had some small business owners and some residents step up and create a political action committee working on Lafourche's future. So you can find any of this information, videos of the town halls we've done. We're doing another town hall tonight at 6 p.m. at the Matthews Government Complex to reach out to more members of the public to really explain this going into the March 25th election. Early voting is going on now, so you can go vote anytime this week. So we're looking forward to seeing this through and creating a brighter day.
Are you sensing that when y'all go to some meetings, I can't tell you how many tax proposals we've covered since '84. And some of them with your dad, you know, when he was superintendent in Terrebonne. And people get confused because what I find is people don't take the time to read it. They don't print it out. They don't read it. They go to the coffee shop. Somebody tells them, I'm voting against that for this reason. They walk out and they go, hell, I'm against it. Joe or Jane just told me. I urge them, educate yourself. Get a pencil and a paper and write down, if I'm being billed $16, but he's saving me $40 on this end, what am I going to save in my household or my business? And to me, that's how you say yay and nay.
Yeah.
And don't do it by one person at the coffee shop.
Yeah. We worked very hard with, you know, other media outlets like the Gazette down in Lafourche to actually Casey and Addie put together a nice article and did a very fair and balanced thing.
Yeah.
I talked to the naysayers in the room as well, but again, just something that we think we're on the right track and something I think is gonna pay dividends out into the future.
But in the final scheme of things, it comes down to trust. If they trust you and they think you've been doing a good job, and if they trust Mr. Martin, it's a trust issue, and if they vote yes, at the end of the day, you have to deliver.
No doubt.
Mr. Martin, one last pitch. How are you, when you met with the teachers, obviously, I would assume they were all excited. Am I right or wrong?
Not just the teachers.
Everybody. It's
Bus
cafeteria
drivers,
workers,
custodians,
yeah.
cafeteria workers, they're all excited. And they're very optimistic. And listen, if I was sitting right here selling the community that Lafourche Parish needed to increase sales taxes by 1/2 penny or 1 penny to support public education, I think that's a great argument, and I can support it. Mm-hmm. What we're asking the people of Lafourche Parish to do is to not support a 1 penny, not support a 1/2 penny, support 0.4 increase in sales tax collections, while off-ramping 0.4 for solid waste, while lowering property taxes, while lowering sales taxes for road sales tax collections in half the parish. I can't imagine a better deal. When we're asking for an increase in revenue for public schools, yet for many families this is going to be either a cost neutral or even a potential savings, I can't bring a better plan to the people to support public education. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done. And if you have questions, I would encourage anybody, reach out to my office, reach out to Mr. Archie's office, reach out to the Working on Lafourche's Future Facebook page, or web page or YouTube, because the facts are pretty clear and pretty stark to me. I believe that we're underfunding public education in Lafourche Parish. I believe that we must invest heavily in public education in Lafourche Parish because it's one of the primary driving forces behind economic development. And this is a way to do it while being very sensitive to both the taxpayer and the business community as we navigate this post-IDA world.
Mr. Chaisson, we'll give you the last word.
You know what? I appreciate the time and letting us take some time on the show to get this out there. Again, Mr. Martin said it over and over. This is something that we've worked really hard on, something that we're proud of, and something that not only going to help the business community, but help our teachers. And look, as a parent of two little girls in the public school system in Lafourche, and hopefully one day a grandparent of some kids in the public school system in Lafourche, it's something that we need to do, and it's time that we take that leap of faith.
Yeah, and as always, if you have a better plan, if you're on the other side and you want to contradict anything said, we always invite you on Bayou Time. Just give us a call. But from what the plan is, it sounds to me like nobody's paying more money.
That's right.
So I want to be transparent. I want to get the facts out. But if you don't believe that and you can prove it to me, come on, we got plenty of seats up here on Bayou Time. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Martin.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. All right, we'll take a short break. We'll be back with more right here on Bayou Time.